It's March 21st, 2024. Hi there, welcome to episode 315 of Roqe. Rest in peace, dear Faramarz. You really set the standard. I'm Jian Gomeshi. Hello to you from Toronto. Salam Dustan Aziz. Durud bar shama. Rest in peace, dear legend. You really set the standard. There's something about the passing of an icon that provokes a profound sense of our own impermanence. Part of the shock is in realizing that we are hostages to time, captives to a life that will change on a dime. And it's like our own transience becomes all the more apparent when we witness the ending of our idols. Even as we accept that we are mortal, we exist in the hope or expectation that those who most influence us will live forever. And so, like Leonard Cohen or David Bowie, Faramarz Aslani felt eternal, ageless. Surely there's no expiry date on a sage. His strengths went beyond any timestamp or the turning of a page. But in the last 24 hours, we heard the excruciating news that Faramarz was no longer with us. Despite barely making it to the end of his 8th decade, he succumbed to a cancer that had very quickly and completely consumed his precious body, our precious Faramarz. The evidence was once again laid bare that this world can be incredibly unfair. Rest in peace, dear Faramarz. You really set the standard. For most all Iranians around the world, the passing of Faramarz Aslani is devastating news. He endlessly gave love and positivity to a traumatized community. He created anthems that are woven into our cultural fabric. We will sing his melodies to eternity. We will preach his words forever. And as a testament to his character, he was pretty much the only Iranian on the planet that you cannot find any criticism of. Look at the outpouring around the world on this day. Look at the sadness and deference in every way. His undeniable appeal could never be ignored. He was and is truly universally adored. Rest in peace, dear Faramarz. You really set the standard. But it's important to make note of the pioneering strength of this musical icon, what set him apart, because Faramarz Aslani was so much more than that handsome guy everyone has a selfie with, or that velvet-voiced singer who was behind that epic big hit. He was a groundbreaker. He set the standard with his character and creative defiance, and here are just 4 ways of many. Faramarz was a trailblazer who set a new bar for Iranian popular music. Number 1. Faramarz Aslani wrote all of his own music and lyrics. Those hits of his, they were all him. Now, that may not be a huge deal in Western music with a tradition of Springsteen, Dylan, or Leonard Cohen, but in Iran of the 1970s, this was heresy. In fact, it was CBS Records before 1979 that virtually begged Faramarz to work with famous Iranian poets and lyricists of the time. Faramarz refused and stuck with the contention that if he was going to sing songs, they should be from his emotions, his words, his creative well. Number 2. Faramarz Aslani created timeless music by refusing the fashions of any particular era. Back to that period of the 70s, the pressure was on him to release his big debut record with big production, orchestration, horns, disco or rock sounds that were all the rage at the time. He responded to his label, his critics, by releasing an album with stripped down production, a simple acoustic guitar, a bass, some percussions. The song soared. The crowds roared. What he made transcended the pitfalls of being too connected to any one time period. He was constructing classics. Number 3. Faramarz Aslani was a groundbreaker because he consciously committed himself and his songs to accessible and easy lyrics. This was a man who grew up a wordsmith, fluent in different languages, a journalist with an expensive vocabulary, a poet worthy of the intellect and creativity of the greats, but he recognized that to create universal appeal to different generations, a simple lyric would go a long way. His massive hit, Agigeruz, that is an anthem for Iranians around the world, was the product of intentionally creating an idea and a lyric accessible to the masses. He was a man of the people at a time when singers were expected to commit themselves to the sophisticated elite poets of the moment. And finally, and maybe most importantly, number 4, Faramarz Aslani was a groundbreaker because he lived a life of respect and integrity. He led by example. He believed in building others up. He rejected jealousy and bitterness, even when his career was stolen from him at the zenith with the coming of the Islamic Revolution. Even when he was effectively exiled, he never succumbed to anger or self-victimization. Rest in peace, dear legend. You really set the standard. He committed himself to a path of treating those around him with honor. He even suggested his famous chic way of dressing was to show respect to others by looking the best he could. He supported young musicians. He gave to endless causes. He spoke for Iranians around the world for human rights, democracy, and freedom without ever expecting anything in return. He was integrity. It's no surprise he was so beloved. And all this in a man with that silky baritone and those beautiful, timeless melodies. Try and listen to his love songs today without shedding a tear. Try and find anyone that Iranians can universally agree was so dear. You were our star. You were our role model. And we will miss you profoundly. Thank you for setting a standard and living a life so true. Ustad Faramarz Aslani, this one's for you. On this new episode of Roqe, we devote the entire edition to the late Faramarz Aslani, remembering him, playing some of his music, speaking to one of his devoted artistic followers, and listening to his thoughts on his legacy in his own words. This is Roqe, episode 315, Rest in Peace, Legend, remembering Faramarz Aslani.
فرامرز اصلانی یکی از من میتونم بگم یکی از پدیده‌های جدید هستش در موسیقی ما. شعر میگه، خودش آهنگ میسازه، خودش میزنه، خودش میخونه، بعضی وقتا خودشم گوش میکنه.
چون به یاد تو میافتم دیدم از اشک تر میشه. سفر کردم که یابم بلکه یارم را، نجستم یار و گم کردم دیارم را، نجستم یار و گم کردم دیارم را. شام تارم کو، جلوه بهارم کو، بیر و خش نزارم کو. همه کسم تو، هر هوسم تو، هم نفسم تو، بال و پرم تو، هم سفرم تو.
And then that song, which has so much meaning to me for all kinds of reasons. We are here in the Roqe studio. Smart Pegah is here. Hi, Pegah.
Hello.
That essay I was trying to not be emotional because I've been so sad. Been so really sad. And last night I had the weirdest reaction. I guess it's not the weirdest reaction. I mean, it's sadness, but it kind of crept up on me that I heard he was that the Faramarz had died. I was at the gym last night. Super P actually texted me and said, Jian, Faramarz has died, you know? And I was like, and I kind of felt numb. And then about an hour or two later, I just sat in the change room till like 1 a.m. And then I started listening to Faramarz music and crying uncontrollably.
Yeah.
Really weird, like just crying uncontrollably. It's not that weird, I suppose, that, you know, when somebody dies, but he's not a family member of mine. I knew him. I would consider him a friend. We met a few times, you know, and certainly we interviewed him a couple times here. And I love him and everything he represents and all of that. But I was so saddened by this person being taken from us, because I really believe everything I just said in that essay.
Absolutely.
It's not hyperbole.
Yeah.
You can't find somebody to say something negative about him, because he transcended it all. You know, he transcended it all, and in the meantime, he was in that interview that we did 3 years ago, that the big interview that I want to play some of today. But I actually say to him, I consider you the Persian Leonard Cohen, you know, and that is, you know, I can't say something that's more significant than that. And he responded that way by saying, "Oh my God, you know, to be compared to Leonard Cohen," but he really is in that category, which is kind of untouchable, you know, and you can never predict exactly what's going to happen if somebody like this dies, but you can see the effect right now, where I don't think there's anybody in my timeline that isn't, in social media, at least Iranians, that isn't responding somehow in sorrow with the death of Faramarz Aslani.
No, I completely agree. You know, what you were saying about it being a weird response, it's really not weird, but I have the same feeling. I was sitting with my family last night, and we were just having tea, and I was scrolling through Instagram, and as soon as I saw the news, I kind of blurted it out, and it was almost like this deafening silence for like 2 minutes after I said, you know, this is what's happened. Everyone sitting in the family room just took a moment, and you could see the emotions, and not one person. I mean, you know, I have a younger sister, she's in her 20s, my dad, my parents, they're in their 60s, and the fact that, you know, that big generational gap, and yet you saw that emotion in everyone. So I absolutely agree with you. I think that every Iranian across the world right now is you know, feeling this immense loss.
You know, I should explain to people that this is not the show last night. If you'd asked me what our show number 315 is, we was going to be featuring, to be fair, actually featuring another icon, Chapel for a feature interview, which we recorded a couple of days ago, and it was on Nowruz.
Very excited
here's
for
this,
it.
You know, his first big interview in English, Chapel, Black Cats. You know, the whole history of Black Cats. That was going to be this episode. We even have sponsors for it. We were doing it. And of course, you know, as soon as by midnight last night, I was texting you guys, the team, and saying, "Hey guys, we're not doing anything tomorrow. We're focusing tribute episode to Faramarz Aslani." And then of course it was, what can we contribute to the conversation out there, because everybody is focusing on this. I'm in other news outlets and things like that, or shows. Ours being somewhat different because it's in English, and I knew I really wanted to do an opening essay. And then we talked about having a little bit of conversation, maybe one or two guests, and we've landed on a wonderful guest, Peyman Salimi, the singer-songwriter, who, when he was in the Roqe studio last year, played a Faramarz Aslani song, Shab, and said, "This is my inspiration for being a musician." So he seemed like the right person. We talked to him, and then something I wanted to do on this episode is, so we've had Faramarz on the show 2 or 3 times, but the first time was this big interview that actually I'm so honored to say was one of the first. It was the first big interview he's ever done in English after so many years. And despite the fact that not only is his English fluent, it's incredibly eloquent because he was an English journalist. I mean, he's a, you know, as I joke in that interview with him, people were saying, "Can Faramarz speak English?" And it's like, he speaks English better than almost anybody who speaks English, you know? And that interview was one of my favorite moments we've had on the show. It was exactly almost 3 years ago. It's about a 2-hour interview, an hour and a half interview. But the last 15 or 20 minutes of it is, unbeknownst to me that this would be relevant, of course, but it's talking about legacy, you know? And when you interview somebody Faramarz wasn't old, but he was, you know, getting into the autumn of his years, right? So when you interview something like that, you start to think of questions about, you know, have you thought about, how do you feel about getting older, these kind of things. So that the last part is all about his legacy, and in his words, how he feels about wanting to be remembered or mortality or all that. So I would recommend if somebody's interested and somebody wants to hear an interview in English, I dare say, if I may be so immodest, it's a great primer. It's an hour and a half. If you want to know about Faramarz Aslani, that interview, it's all there. And he was amazing in it, and I really was quite proud of it. But that last 15 minutes is so moving and so relevant, unfortunately, today, that what we'll do at the end of this episode, at the end of our conversation here and our guest, we're going to give you that. We're going to give people that 15 minutes. We've got it queued up so that it's about 15 minutes, right, Super B? Yeah. So we'll play that.
Yeah, I actually listened to that interview earlier today because I felt like I really wanted to hear his voice, having heard the news and things like that. I wanted to hear something other than his music. And so I went back and I listened to it. And one of my favorite parts of that entire interview is where you ask him, are you one of these people who are OCD about getting things done? And do you feel like now that you're thinking about your legacy, is there more that you want to do? And just the way that he responded to that with, such grace, the way he responded, he said, I have so much left, so much that's undone. And he even joked about, writing things on the back of tissue boxes and shoe boxes and things like that. And I loved it. His charm and his response and his humility all came through so well in that part.
Yeah, he really, he couldn't be more of a gentleman. And the fact that he was so, you don't want to, I don't know how much stock we're supposed to put in someone being liked, but we're not talking about like Instagram likes, even though those exist for him as well.
Yeah.
He was genuinely, when I said in that opening essay that you can't find someone to criticize for him, think about how remarkable that is.
Yeah.
In the global Iranian community. I haven't talked to some of the leaders of the regime in Iran. Maybe they're
sure
not
they'll
so.
Have some not so
they
nice
may not be
words to
fanboys, But even in Iran, he is. It's just amazing. It's amazing how he negotiated his way through life as an Iranian artist, somehow with everybody supporting and loving and admiring and respecting what he does and feeling that he would give that back to everybody as well.
Yeah,
that is almost impossible to do. That's threading the needle in this community, right?
It really is. And, we often joke, you and I, between, the shows and things like that about Persian Twitter and things like that. But it really is a place where you see a lot of this commentary that you're just mentioning. And looking at the outpouring of love for this individual, reading the comments, reading the messages, things like that, there wasn't one even iota of
what the fuck are they going to say?
Well, this is the thing. But the reality is we've seen it time and time again, right? We've lost other icons.
Of course,
we've had other individuals who are, well known in the community pass away.
Even with Jian, I remember some people
exactly.
going, "Isn't this over the top? Did you really listen to him?"
Exactly.
Yeah.
And honestly, I couldn't find one single thing reading through comments and posts and things like that anyone had anything negative to say.
Here's something amazing about that too. Faramarz Aslani kind of actually, I don't want to say he took a political position, but in the last couple of years, he was very involved in the uprising.
Very.
He was, attending, I think he was in a LA demonstration. He was definitely in the DC demonstrations. Yep. He came on this show and we talked on the 1-year anniversary of the killing of Mahsa Amini, and he talked, very bluntly about how he feels about the situation in Iran, and he was not shy about he's very close friends with the Pahlavis in DC. There's lots of pictures with Yasmin and Reza Pahlavi and the Crown Princess and Crown Prince, and yet he never wore any of that. It's not like the people who I can't even think of someone who spoke at demonstrations that doesn't somehow get mired in that divisive community where who do you support, where are you at, then you're in this camp, you're in that camp, and he just managed to rise above that. And there's something that he said in that interview that we did, where he said to me why he loves Leonard Cohen and why Leonard Cohen's songs are so important and why he wanted to write his own songs, because Leonard Cohen was one of his influences. He said, because people believe Leonard Cohen. They like him because when he writes those songs, they believe him, there's no artifice there. You don't go like, this guy's creating a character. You go, and I think that's a great way potentially to sum up Faramarz Aslani's appeal beyond the incredible melodies, the great lyrics, the charm, the $1 million smile, and all all of that, is that I think people really believed him, still do, believed in his character.
Right.
So when he gets up in a demonstration and says stuff, you don't think there's an agenda there. You're like, Faramarz Aslani is trying to help people.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think, talking about a political stance, again, something we've talked about is this notion of the flag and which flag to represent Iran and what's behind that. And, I was looking through his Instagram, and he had a single post, or probably more than one post, but there was one specific post where there's an image of him, and he's actually circled like a pin of a flag that he's got on. And there was this very well thought out response in the caption of it, indicating that, some people have mentioned that he showed up to a demonstration and was against a certain type of flag, but he's very proud to wear a flag that has the lion and the sun, and the reason why he wears it is this, that, and the other. And he goes on, and it was this really well thought out, heartfelt, authentic kind of post.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what you're saying, is that, he was so true to who he was, and there was never any artificial fakeness about him or anything, and that's why people loved him so much, and that's why I think his legacy will continue the way we've seen it in the last 24 hours.
And I called him ageless, but I mean, I spoke to the rapper Irfan today. He was kind of saying, I'm in shock. Faramarz and I were, jammed together, that type of thing. I spoke with Kambi Hosseini. He said that Faramarz was his favorite. Why is he your favorite? Because he was his own guy, singer-songwriter, like he did his old stuff. Okay, and then why else is your favorite? He said because of his commitment to sorrow. His like sadness.
Yeah.
And so there were so many people who were relating to him. I have to say, in terms of the shock factor, right? It's a cliche to say that when someone is sick. I dare say that you just went through this with your was it your grandfather?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where for a long time he was sick, and in the case of your granddad. And I was saying to you, you got to be ready.
Yeah.
Because if he actually, leaves us,
yeah,
it's still going to hit you.
Yeah, absolutely.
No matter how, and you're a very strong person, strong Pegah, and with Faramarz, I have to say that because I know some folks who are very close to him. I knew he was very sick. I knew as of about 2 or 3 weeks ago, when they were sort of right before they posted something saying, we're canceling some tours, we're back in 2025. He was really, really. They had diagnosed the cancer, and it was not an early diagnosis. It was like it's all spread all over the body. It was very, very bad news, and I was thinking I want to do some sort of tribute to him, but you don't. I'm not the New York Times waiting for Norman Lear to die, so I have the obit ready. This is somebody I love, an icon and a friend, so I don't want to start writing something. So, but I think I kept thinking about, oh my God, like how horrible will it be if I have to write something? I don't want him to leave us. That might be a strange way of coming at this. In the last few days, and this is a cliche too, because this happened with my dad before he died. He was kind of rallying, like he was getting a little better. And so I honestly thought,
that hope. It's like that last little bit of hope.
Faramarz is going to be okay. Yeah. Maybe the diagnosis wasn't as dire. And he might have to get some treatment or whatever, but he's going to be all right. He's not that old. He's a strong guy, And so the news last night was just like, oh my God.
It's like you prepare for it, but then ultimately when that moment does hit, it's almost like you're completely unprepared.
Completely unprepared.
And it just
a gut punch.
blindsides you, even though you spent all that time thinking, in the case of anyone, any loved one, you spend all this time thinking about the fact that you're going to be strong and your logic prevails and you know that this is coming.
And have you ever had to write a eulogy?
Yes.
You have?
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Did you find that I've had to do it a few times, a couple times for friends and things, friends I lost, but once for my dad, obviously. Do you find that I find that it's almost impossible? It's like it's never good enough.
No.
You can never write a good eulogy.
No.
Like you always feel shitty, like this isn't enough for this person. And I started writing this essay that we just did in the middle of the night last night, like how am I going to come at this? And nothing feels good enough, because it's just like how do I say words
about such a great individual and live up to
and maybe I'll have more perspective. I mean, I don't even know if I'll have more perspective 2 weeks from now rather than 24 hours, but it's really, really hard. It's really, really hard and really sad and really weird. And there was no chance we could run an enthusiastic, fun interview with Shahbaz Shabara, which I loved, and I can't wait for people to hear it.
We were so excited for it.
Yeah. We can't. And what are we going to do, right? So,
you mentioned that you spoke to Irfan and a couple of other people, and you have friends who are so close to Faramarz Aslani. And
Hamid McPay was really sad. I talked to him on the phone today.
Yeah. One of the things I was thinking is actually, one of the other incredible attributes of this individual is that there was so much collaboration with so many different artists and so many different people.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the things that Faramarz Aslani did was that, you mentioned in your essay that he was groundbreaking and a trailblazer. And he really was, because I think he pushed the boundaries of Persian music and introduced so many different new elements into it. I mean, how many people around the same age do you know, like Faramarz Aslani, who then did a collaboration with the type of music that Danny Asad does, for example, right? Yeah. So you see all these genres blending into each other. I mean, he did everything from traditional Persian music with Sima Bina to blues and jazz and all sorts of different things. And I think that just shows his craft and his approach to music.
You know what's really cool is I want to play. I talked about the production of Agayeruz, right? It's so. I find it very, very validating. Do you have that, Super B? Could you just play us a little bit of Agayeruz? This, of course, I mean, nobody needs no introduction for Iranians. If you're not Iranian, you really just come to get to know Faramarz Aslani, maybe. But I want to, just for the sound of it, can you just play Agayeruz?
اگه یه روز بری سفر بریز پیشم بی خبر اسیر رویاها میشم دوباره باز تنها میشم به شب میگم پیشم بمونه به باد میگم تا صبح بخونه از دیار یاری چرا میری تنها میذاری
I was trying to think, is this the biggest anthem for Iranians? It's got to be up there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, maybe
what else?
Tavallud, maybe something like that, or like I don't know. I don't know what's up there.
In the same category, I think I really can't match anything. I mean, there's that one song that everyone plays at the end of Mehmooni's, but that's like a different, that one. But that's a totally different category.
That's Shahram Shapari, I think. What I find incredibly validating is, we've come to know Iranian music, especially the LA sound. Shisha Hash, lots of production, nothing wrong with that. There's amazing songs. Yeah. This is it's a campfire song. It's a guy with an acoustic guitar. Yeah. And that song becomes the song that in the last half century is the biggest song that Iranians can sing back to you anywhere, any party, any wedding, any
And everyone knows the words. Everyone knows, the way it sounds. I mean, even listening to it right now, I've been listening to Faramarz Aslani songs all day. I've been listening to interviews. I've, been thinking about him. And of course, this song has always been in the back of my mind within the last 20 some odd hours. But even hearing it again just now, it still gives me that same, I don't know, it's like this, I don't want to say chill, but like it just makes you feel a certain way. And it's the simplicity of it. It's the...
Which was in defiance of not only what everybody else was doing at the time,
imagine.
but in defiance of his own record company. It was like,
Yeah.
I don't think so. Putting something out with just a acoustic guitar and a bass, and there he goes and does it, and
Goes with his instinct,
goes
he
with his
mentions.
instincts. And it's also such an interesting career trajectory where he goes to England, goes to journalism school, comes back, and he's working in an English magazine in Iran. He's like, and then puts out a record, and then has to go to England. I mean, it's lives lived, right? It's really, really
An incredible story. I mean, again, going back to the interview from 2021 that you spoke with him, I had a good chuckle where he says, my dad wanted me to be a lawyer. And I actually laughed out loud because I was thinking, how many times have we heard that story of Iranians living in exile whose parents wanted them to be one thing and somehow they ended up in a completely different, way of life. And look where someone like Faramarz Aslani is. He has a song that's transcended generations and time and everything.
And yet, not my favorite Faramarz Aslani song.
Really?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay.
But my favorite song, so he did an album not that long ago. It was about 6 or 7 years ago with Babak Amini called Midnight to Dawn. What's the Persian name of that? It's
Nime Shab Ta Bam Dad.
Yeah. And first of all, Babak Amini, our dear Babak, who's I know he's devastated today. He's gone to DC to be with Marjan Faramarz, the late Faramarz' wife, but the production. So Babak arranged the songs on that. I think it's some of the best stuff that Babak's ever done in terms of arrangement. It's a beautiful record. So on that record, there's a song written by Faramarz. All the songs, of course, were written by Faramarz, but arranged by Babak called Çeke. That is my favorite Faramarz Aslani song. I want to play a little bit of that. Can you play that, please?
این مزرعه بی حاصل است گفتم ببین پندم مده که اینها همه کار دل است لا 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 در شب تنهایی من عشق بود و شمع و شراب بوی تنت پیچیده بود در سرزمین رخت خواب تا سحرگه یاد تو بود مونس من در شب تاب مرغ شب بر شاخه میخواند از شبانه خوب دیدار
Bit of Çeke from the record Midnight to Dawn from about 2017, 2018, Faramarz, and that's Babak playing the guitar. I love that song.
Such a great song.
Who writes that melody?
Well,
who writes that chorus?
Not only the melody, the emotional resonance and the depth of the poetry and what he's saying
and
is
the
just
crooning voice,
incredible,
melting.
And the thing is that he actually mentions, his songwriting technique and the way that he writes these songs, and specifically about Çeke, he mentioned that it started with literally just one word, and that sprung this idea in his mind, and that's what led to the song. And I think he mentioned something like writing it on a napkin or something like that, and he said that he was thinking about himself and not having a drop left in himself creatively, and that's what led to this incredible song.
It's really it's a lot. It's so again, I think Faramarz was in his 70s, right?
Yep. 79
But somehow,
or just shy of, I think.
okay, so that's not actually super young.
No.
But
it's also not super
it's not
old.
super old. It's not super
At
old,
all.
and he seems so vibrant.
That's exactly
That
it.
I think there's a category of people that people would go, okay, he's lived a long life, and Faramarz wasn't that.
Was not that.
At all.
I mean, he always looked so impeccable.
Dashing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me bring on we've got our guest waiting for us. Let me go to him. So stick around here, Pegah. Peyman Salimi. Peyman Salimi is a talented Iranian Italian singer-songwriter, guitarist, and music producer. His latest album, The Psychology of Letting Go, was released last year. So the last time we had Paymon here in the studio, he talked about the influence Faramarz Aslani had on him as a musician, as a songwriter, and he played the Faramarz song Shab here in the Roqe studio. So right now, Peyman Salimi joining me from New York City. Hello, sir.
Hi, Jian. Thanks for having me, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too, although the Happy New Year was short-lived. This is really sad news over the last 24 hours, huh?
Yeah, man, I'm so shocked. I mean, I obviously I knew the news. I knew he was sick. It's been a month now, but I was just hoping for a miracle to happen. I mean, nobody was expecting that it would happen so soon. And yeah, man, this morning I woke up and I was devastated. I couldn't stop crying because he's such a big part of my past. Like that, my childhood, and the music. I think I touched, the guitar, the sound of the guitar, kind of like got through his music. I really found out. I realized that, oh my God, I'm in love with the guitar. I want to play it, and yeah. So
first of all, let's take this one at a time. First of all, it does feel like a cliche. We talked a little bit about this so far on the show, that to say, even when you're expecting it, it's still a shock when it happens. I did have some, whatever you want to call it, inside info or something that dear Faramarz was really, really sick. This was not looking good, but still you hold out this little candle of hope. And then when it happens, and the same thing I've been saying, same thing as you, I involuntarily started just breaking out into crying and wondering why. Of course I knew him. I would say we're a friend, but why am I this sad, this upset, just not just for him and for our community, but for what he represented, which we've been talking something about. What's really interesting to me about you is I think of you, I mean, I know you've sort of been you've produced pop music and stuff too, but I think of you as sort of an alternative guy. So it's interesting that Faramarz was so important to you, that this guy who, it's not like he was writing shisha hash pop songs, but his stuff was pretty straight down the middle, but that you found him to be such a muse is quite beautiful. Talk to me about that.
I mean, first of all, you're putting so much responsibility on my shoulders. I really appreciate the expectations and the analogy, but I mean, that guy was really unique in the Iranian music scene. I think among those artists that after the revolution they went to LA, and most of them got dragged into this LA kind of music scene. He was among the only ones. I mean, I think one of the only ones, the few ones that really resisted that. Yeah. That kind of, because they shaped those guys. They shaped a whole generation's taste. Basically, they changed it. Because before the revolution, so much good stuff was happening, and then it kind of like it flipped. The whole thing crumbled, and I think he was one of the only ones. He didn't work. He was not active after that. I think he just didn't want to be part of that world. And after 15 years, maybe he released another album. Yeah, but he just wanted.
In the 90s. Well, to be fair, he was in England. He was in England for a few years. Exactly. And then when he came to America, you're right, though. He was never part of that LA sound. But even as we've been talking about, even when he was in Iran, even in the late 70s, he was bucking trends, right? He refused to do, like I keep talking about how and I think this is where I see the through line to you, how that first album, the music that some part of what makes that music so timeless is like, Leonard Cohen, like Neil Young. It's just stripped down. It's him and a guitar. It's him and a guitar and some percussion, maybe a bass. And so it doesn't have all the weight of a production of a certain era. It's not the disco sound of the late 70s or the rock sound or the punk era.
No, it's raw. It's singer-songwriter raw.
And he was defying all the trends and CBS to be able to do that, right?
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as far as I know, I think he was. I think I can say that because, as far as I know, he was the only one who actually was writing his own songs. Because Farhad is another example, but he was singing other people's lyrics and other people's melodies most of the time.
Yeah,
I think he wrote maybe a few songs of like original. He had only a few original songs. So Faramarz was like, this is the way you do it, and he was the pioneer of this thing. Like this is what it means to be a singer-songwriter, and it became a thing. And just, you can do it. You can actually play. You can compose your own songs. You can write your own lyrics, and you can play them. You can sing them. The whole package, as it was, obviously, the whole world. I mean, was already on that path. Like singer-songwriters were everywhere, but in Iran, it was a new phenomenon. I think he was a pioneer in that. I can't think of anybody else. I know there were people.
Vegan, maybe? The Vegan, maybe?
No, I mean, Vegan, as far as I know, Vegan really, I mean, the songs that I know from Vegan, they were mostly composed by other people. Maybe the melodies, I mean, he would contribute to the melody. I'm just speaking based on what I know, and I don't want
for sure. There are, we see it in newer artists, and we certainly see it in you and our buddy Ali Yazimi and stuff. But what's interesting to me as well is that you talk about Faramarz being an influence on you as a guitarist, because he doesn't get a lot of credit for. I mean, he plays the guitar, but it's usually his voice, the velvet voice that we talk about. How did he inspire you on guitar?
That album, his first album, Ageyeruz, was the first classical guitar-based album before the revolution, I think, in the Iranian market. And it was him. Obviously, Faramarz composed most of his songs on the guitar, but in that album, there's Armik doing all those crazy solos, and that you can hear. And I think it was such a perfect combination. Like the chemistry was there between the two of them. And yeah, it's just, I mean, I got my first job in Iran when I was 18 years old, I guess, as a guitar teacher. And when I was teaching, half of the time I was just teaching one of his songs. And I was like, oh man, this guy, I should pay him a percentage of what I'm earning. Because it's honestly, like all the guitar instructors in Iran should do that, because this is fact. This is a fact that most of my generation, most of the 90% of the guitar players, they fell in love with the sound of guitar, even if they didn't know that maybe that was Armik doing all the solos in that album. But they said, oh, this is a way actually to do music. So it became like a reference point for many of us.
In recent years, you were doing that cover Shab, that Faramarz song, which I've seen you do live, but also you did here in the studio. Did he ever hear it? Did you ever hear from him? Or
yeah, I did. I asked through some friends. I reached out and I asked for permission. He really loved it. I still have I have his message that he really loved my take. And man, I can't believe this thing happened.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's like I feel like I'm a musical orphan right now. I don't want to get too dramatic, but it's a fact. I can't get over it. I've been
that's a very profound and sad and beautiful way to put it. Musical orphans, like it's like I think a lot of Iranians, and particularly I would think Iranian artists are feeling that. It's weird. I don't know why. That's been the common theme today, just talking to people, friends, has been shock. Exactly what like, how does it make sense? Or maybe it's a product of the fact that he really wasn't that old, so it just feels like, when somebody's like in their 90s or something, you go, oh my God, this is horrible. But we kind of knew at this point, but for Faramarz, it's just like, still, he just put that record out a few years ago. That was From Midnight to Dawn, was a great record, amazing songs on it. He's still playing gigs everywhere. It just didn't make any sense.
I was supposed to go on tour, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
So nobody expected that. Nobody. So it's hard. It's hard to chew it down. I'm still really struggling. It's been a few hours, and I'm like, does this really happen, or this is just a nightmare? I should wake up.
Thanks for thanks for taking time out of I know you're in rehearsals right now to do some live shows, and thanks for doing this. And do you have perhaps it's Shab, or you actually did a cover today. You on Instagram you posted it was another song from the first record, wasn't it? What song did you do? You were singing.
It was this morning. That was the only thing that could calm me down a little bit. It was Tariq, the third song and it's about being, is there any afterlife? And it says "Duruge روز دوباره دروغی دیگره." So I thought it was like, oh, he said we knew what his beliefs were on that matter. So do you
have a favorite song? Faramarz song? I think Shab is my favorite. I'm just gonna tell this, and I'm gonna let you go. Okay.
It took me, I think, a lot of courage, because that album is so perfect. Like, everything is about it so perfect, and I was so hesitant to do a cover from that album, because like, I don't want to. It's hard to come up with something new, but there are a couple of songs that, structure-wise and chord progression-wise, they're pretty messy. Like Shab is one of them. If you hear the original version, this beautiful melody and lyrics are placed in a messy environment. So I said, oh, maybe I could add to this thing just a tiny bit. And apparently it worked out. People really like it.
No, it's beautiful.
I think there's another song also, like this Tariq is like, there are a few parts of the song that could enhance. So who knows, maybe I'm going to cover that one too.
It's always good to talk to you. I'm sorry it's on this with this sad news, but I really appreciate you coming on. We'll play a little bit of Shab right now. Thanks, Paymon.
Thank you, Jian. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
گر تو را بخت یارا نه چندان به کام است، ور تو را گوشه تیرگی ها مقام است. عشق و آهت نبخشد پناهی که دنیای ما را، عشق می باید این روزگاران خدا را. هر چه خواهی تو از لطف او آرزو کن.
A bit of Shab. Such a great song.
Such a great song. All of them. I mean, which one isn't?
That was interesting having Paymon talk about his inspiration as a guitarist.
Yeah.
It's so counterintuitive. But that there wasn't a lot of people doing this, and that he hears this and goes, "That's what I want to do."
I think it's a combination. I mean, how do you hear that voice and that guitar and the lyrics all together and not want to pick up an instrument, honestly?
Thanks again to Peyman Salimi for being on. So I want to play this, go to play some of the interview from 2021 as we go out and play some of what Faramarz in his own words about how he wants to be remembered, about how he sees legacy, about what he still thinks he has left to do at that point. Before we do that, though, it's going to be interesting the next couple of weeks, I guess, or a couple of months. I'm guessing there's going to be major tributes planned, celebrations of the life of Faramarz Aslani. I already know a couple of people who are working on that. But in the meantime, it's amazing to see from all corners of Iranian public people comments that are people in some cases people haven't met him, but have been leaving very moving posts in social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, etc. I know you picked a couple of choice ones. What do you have?
I'm going to start with something that Moz Drobrani actually wrote.
Oh, yeah, I saw the Moz post.
Yeah, I read this, and I don't know, it really hit home for me because, like you mentioned, I've recently lost my grandfather, and so reading that and going through the emotions of, experiencing a loss so big to the community, it really hit home. So Moz Drobrani's written, I am heartbroken to hear of the passing of Faramarz Aslani.
Talented Iranian-American comedian, Moz Drobrani.
Yes.
Yep. In case we need to situate. It's like Aga Geruz. Who doesn't know Moz Drobrani?
Who doesn't know Moz Drobrani?
Right.
I am heartbroken to hear of the passing of Faramarz Aslani. Sometimes in life we meet our heroes and they turn out to be even better than we imagined. Faramarz was that for me. I first discovered his music in college when I was learning more about my Iranian roots. I had never been a big fan of Persian music, but his unique voice and style changed that for me. Later, I got to know him through some friends, and he was so very kind to me. This was before I even got into comedy and was just another fan. When my grandfather was in his final days, Faramarz, who had gotten to know our family through mutual friends, came to his bedside and recorded him singing one last time. I will never forget that gesture. He gave my grandfather the joy of singing in his final days.
Wow.
Now, Faramarz is also gone. We have lost an angel. Listen to his songs and let him live forever in our hearts.
Wow. Yeah, that story.
Yeah.
Faramarz coming to visit the granddad.
Yeah, I'm tearing up even right now just having read that. Yeah. That one definitely touched me. There were so many, but there's two more I really want to read, and the next two are from individuals who I just saw on Twitter, so not very big names in the community as far as I know. One user with the Twitter or X handle Musallai Homeira says, I never forget when my sister and I first heard his music. We loved it. After the regime took over Iran, I searched so long to find a cassette of his latest works for my sister's birthday, as his music was then banned. I can never forget the face of my sister when I gave it to her. It's one of my fondest memories of my late sister. Now he too is gone. May their souls rest in peace.
Wow. And by the way, that's something we haven't talked much about. I referenced it in the essay, and I know we talk about it in one of the interviews I had with Faramarz, but his career, he's this young guy, puts out an album, becomes a hit, puts out a second album, 77, 78. His career is like skyrocketing. Yep.
And then
boom, Islamic Revolution happens, right?
Yep.
Not only does he, and if you remember at the time, he has a British wife, I think, so or a foreign national, so he has to leave. He feels like he has to, get out of Iran with her as well. Otherwise, he might have stayed, he says. But so not only is he displaced, he's exiled, but his music, which wasn't streaming on Spotify in 1977, 78, is bricks and mortar. It's vinyl and cassettes. Those vinyl and cassettes become extinct and are burned, in some cases are destroyed.
That's right.
By the regime in Iran, right? So imagine that. Not only is your career derailed, but even your actual work is destroyed.
Yeah.
And you're this young guy who was on the rise. It's devastating. I always think about him when I think about the impact of how the Islamic Revolution, how it affected some of the people who were to become icons, or who have still, there are people who had kind of established themselves, whether it's Gugush or Ebi, to a certain extent, enough that when they left, they continued that legacy. Faramarz, I mean, he had Aghe Yeruz later on in life, but he was the very beginning of his career launching within a year or two of the revolution, right? So it's very, very tough, very tough story. And of course, he then continues in the 90s, comes out with this new record, and and I love his relationship with Aghe Yeruz. Some artists hate their hit song, they get sick of it or whatever, and he's grateful for it. He says,
appreciation
that's
he
the
has
song
for it,
that kept me growing and thriving, right?
Yeah. I'm going to read one more,
Sure.
because this one I think is a great, I guess, way to sum up everything we've just said. This is a Twitter user with the handle Shalvar Palangi, who says, "What a sad state of affairs when legends that have brought nothing but joy to this world have to live and die in exile. Rest in peace, Faramarz Aslani."
Yeah. Doesn't he say in the interview that he wants to go back to Iran or something?
He does.
And he never does.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Pegah.
Thank you.
Thank you for being part of this. Thank you, all of you out there listening, for us to kind of do something different that we could only plan in the last few hours, because this was news that we did not expect. I want to say thank you to our team, as ever. Thank you to all of you who listened to us. And of course, now we're going to go to, this is an interview from April 2021. It was actually our 100th episode of Roqe. And as I say, it's Faramarz's first long form interview in English, which is neither here nor there because his English is so amazing. But it is to say that this incredible gem, this artistic genius and precious person in our world, has been relatively unknown to non-Iranians. Hopefully this English interview would help that a little bit. And this is the final part of the interview, the final, say, 15, 20 minutes of the interview, where we're talking about legacy. This is with the great Faramarz Aslani. He was in Los Angeles at the time. I was here in the Roqe studio. In the meantime, thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week with a new episode. We'll probably bring you that Chapel Chapare episode that we were supposed to be doing today, with that big interview and the Black Cats here in the studio, etc. In the meantime, thank you. Mizun Bashin, rest in peace, legend Faramarz Aslani. Faramarz John, do you care about legacy? Do you care about people, about being remembered and being remembered a certain way?
Well, naturally, when you write and when you record, you're hoping that you live on through your work, the body of your work. I hope for years to come, youngsters will watch this and listen, and especially in remember how things were, and how beautifully you can express yourself through this rich language, and pay a little bit more attention to the way they speak or the way they write.
You've mentioned youngsters a couple of times now. You're not that old, but we might as well go there, since you've mentioned mortality and you coming to terms with the mortality existing at a young age. How do you feel about getting older?
I think it's a natural process. I honestly think so. And to me, so the only reality is death. Even birth is debatable. But the only reality is death. So you might as well like that too, find it part of living.
Are you someone who obsesses about, I've got to get these things done while I'm still young and active, and I get, are you like that?
To be honest with you, I have left so many things undone that even if I live 200 years, I won't be able to catch up. So I might as well relax a little bit. But as you mentioned, yes, the consciousness is there. I think, I should do more with what I have. I have my poetry written in the back of Kleenex boxes, shoe boxes. I should gather them together and write them in one book and do some publishing of my short stories, which I have written. I've written some short stories. I have my memoirs. I want to publish the short stories, and also, so many songs that I want to record. But fortunately, I recorded Hanuz in 2 versions in this COVID era, and also another song which is called Yadist, which I have recorded, and it's a beautiful song, and you will hear it perhaps in about a few weeks' time. And and also there are more songs, that I have to really get going.
By the way, where are these Kleenex boxes? Would that have all this poetry on them?
let's kudos to Marjan. She collects every piece of paper that I write on, and I forget. Sometimes I go to find something else, and I suddenly find a box with tissue paper written poetry on it. All these kind of things. I mean, she's fantastic in that sense.
Some valuable Kleenex boxes hanging around your house. We need to preserve those for the
because when it comes, you might forget it, the next moment. So immediately you have to jot it down. And then I'm too lazy to go and write it properly in a book, or I forget it. And that's what happens to it. That's when the Kleenex box becomes a written word.
I want to end to a certain extent where we started, and talking about timeless music. One of the other things that makes me think of Leonard Cohen when I think of you is that Leonard Cohen, no matter how far his career would go or how old he would get, he had this cross-generation appeal. You would go to a Leonard Cohen concert and there'd be people of all ages, and that's really true of you. I mean, people, you don't seem to have an age demographic. You're not a boomer artist like the Eagles who's playing to a bunch of boomers, and I guess that's part of that huge song and part of the way that you've built this career and this. But tell me if you have a sense of what it is that gives you that cross-generational appeal.
Let me say that to begin with, to be compared with that great man is a great honor, and I am totally chuffed about it. And because I respected him throughout all the years that I listened to his albums and his poetry and his music and, so forth and so on. And you say, he appealed to a cross-section of people because he was honest. He was honest about his music and about his writing and about what beliefs he had. He was honest about it. He shared it. Some writers, sort of dictate their art, some artists, some share it. He was one of those who shared it. He brought it with his hands open like that and said, here, this is a gift for you. But some people say, well, if you want it, come and get it. Close-fisted about it. He wasn't. He was a great man, and it's an honor to be compared with him. But because I not only write about my own experience in my music and also in my prose, I also write on behalf of someone who wants to say something I cannot. Somebody who's in love with someone, is burning with love, and wants to say to his beloved how much he feels for her, cannot. I write on his behalf, like a playwright, who writes different characters. I write on behalf of this person who's in love with a woman and is lamenting the separation or the end of their love.
بی خبر رفت و دگر از اون نیامد نامه‌ای نه کلامی نه پیامی نه گشتم به دنبالش ندیدمش به کوچه‌ای به بامی نه.
And also, always, you know, there is a snippet of myself in whatever I write or whatever I sing or whatever I do, which can be as small as a signature.
You know, if you don't mind me making an observation, that one of the things I always say about Leonard Cohen, one of the things that made him so special, is the songs that he wrote. You talked about that first record, Suzanne and Bird on Wire. Those songs that he wrote in his 20s were almost more appropriate as he would get older. They made more sense when he was singing them in his 50s and then in his 60s and I think that's not untrue of you. You know, that the 60-something Faramarz Aslani singing Divar makes as much sense or more than the 26-year-old, you know, and maybe that's part of your lasting appeal as well.
It is funny because as a young man, when I was writing, I always imagined myself much older. You know, I always said, oh, yesteryears, you know, I mean, yesteryears were only 16 or 17 years prior to that. But always, this is in poetry, you know, this is a poetic license, perhaps, that you always reminisce about the past and, you know, use elements of nostalgia in your work, you know. It's, I mean, I was only 25, you know, when I was saying, you know, that, oh, you know, my life has ended now that I'm getting old, that you know, my hair is probably going white in a few years, you know, all these things, you know, happen. And it is a vast world of feelings and complications and but if you look at it in a positive way, you know, it can come to your rescue and it can anchor you down with yourself and you become a very relaxed kind of person and make life easy.
A final question to you. Yes. When you're an Iranian icon, in this moment, I mean, in this moment of the last 42 years, but at a time when there continues to be a turmoil associated with inside Iran, and for a lot of the people in the diaspora, there continues to be factions of people who have different prescriptions for how this can be fixed and how things have to be changed and all of that. Is it hard to navigate those waters? And where I'm sure that you face the pressure from all kinds of different voices and groups to stand for something here or say something about something else or make release a statement or how do you navigate those waters?
Well, first of all, you know, it is not possible to be oblivious to it. You know, I mean, I can see, you know, what tragedy is happening, you know, especially through the contact I have with young people, how unhappy they are, and at times how disillusioned they find themselves. But thank God, you know, for the social media, because at least, you know, they have some kind of an outlet. That to me is the biggest tragedy. It's a big tragedy because I can see huge talents, you know, being wasted. I can see huge talents being punished for their talents. You know, that is a great tragedy. You know, you have an art, you know, you want to share it with the world, but you're punished because you're talented and because you're good in something.
Yeah.
I think the recipe is that the young people of Iran will one day do what is right, and that is get their right in this world. And from the ones that have denied it them. They must and they will. 40 some odd years is nothing in the eyes of the history, you know. We've been through many upheavals as such, many, you know, decades. I am sure, I am positive that the young people of my country are wiser and more educated than that and will one day rise against injustice, which they are facing every single day.
It's still your country, huh? Even when you've spent more than twice the amount of time outside of Iran than inside.
Yeah, I always thought, you know, that a man is like a fountain. He should fall when he rises. I rose in that country. I like to fall in that country, but unfortunately, that's not going to happen. But that is a poetic way of explaining the way I feel. You know, I mean, wherever I've been to the most beautiful places in this world, and I always compare them with our Caspian region, with our deserts, with our waters, with our lakes. You know, it's inevitable. After all these years, I've only lived in Iran for a very short while. You know, most of my life I've been abroad.
Yes.
But it's inescapable. It's a feeling that is inborn, and you cannot do anything about it. Especially, you know, when you had that kind of a grandfather. I hope my kids, you know, my daughters who live in England, you know, will one day realize, you know, that, you know, their father did something right. And, you know.
You don't think they've realized that already?
Oh, yes, they do. They're so proud of me. I mean, I'm so happy. You know, they're lovely. They're lovely young ladies. And you talked about legacy, you know, that's my legacy for them, you know, and a good name that I would leave from me.
Faramarz, I want to go out on the song that you referenced a little while ago, your song from 2020, you released just this past year called Hanuz. What can you tell us about this one?
This was done right at the beginning of getting to grips with the COVID and that things are changed and everything. And I had written that song and I wanted to record it, you know, so we were fortunate enough to be able to record it, because right after that, all the studios were closed and all these kind of things, and I wasn't. But, you know, fortunately, I was able to record that.
This has been a great pleasure. I'm very grateful to you.
Thank you so much, Jian. Thank you for inviting me. I thank all your colleagues there, Jian, who put us in touch, you know, through our picture and through the vocals, and all your colleagues there. And I thank you very much for the line of questioning, which was quite refreshing.
Thank you. I hope to see you post-COVID back on tour, so we can get you back here in Canada. And
absolutely. You might see me in Canada.
Do more of this in person. Kheli mutshakir. Merci.
Thank you, Jian. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Faramarz Aslani, the legendary Iranian-American composer, songwriter, instrumentalist, the man with the satin voice. Faramarz Aslani joined us from Los Angeles today.
هنوزم آن که از من دور گشتی عشق میبارم تو خوبی من خرابم نبودت سخت بیمارم به من گفتی برو با عشق خود دیگر میازارم ولی من دوستت دارم تو سوزه ساز من هستی سروده واژگان من تو خورشیدی تو مهتابی شکوه آسمان من به من گفتی که از این دیوانه بازی دست بردارم ولی من دوستت دارم دوستت دارم اگرچه بی وفایی تو به من گفتی که با غمهای دنیا آشنایی تو غم من را نمیدانم کجایی تو تمام یاد بوده عشق ما را بادها برده ببین اینجا نشسته عاشق تنها افسرده که بی تو چینی عمرش